What's going on, folks? Happy 420. The holiday doesn't quite mean as much to me as it did in my younger days, but it still brings back some fond memories. It's still a good time. We're gonna have a light show today. We are without Mark Hirsch and Shane McGowan, but we do have Coach John in from Carolina, fresh out of practice, doing his thing. He's got a game coming up. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Whenever we have him on, we like to look at the South, and he's got his scouting hat on, so he's going to tell us a little bit about the draft as it's coming up. We're going to talk some schedules and see what's going on. And this time of year, this week especially, every year, you start getting all of these people critiquing the personalities and the character of these poor kids who are trying to do their best, who are 19, 20 years old, 21 years old, and telling them how they're not serious, they're not focused, they're not this, they're not that, they're not worth something, they're not worth that, not worth the money. And I'm reading some of these stories that are coming out, and they're just garbage. A lot of them are just complete garbage. But there's one that keeps coming up, and I understand it because when you make an investment at the top of the draft, and especially when you invest in a quarterback, that can be it. And something I want to, before we get into like the specifics of the Chargers thing, where basically Baker Mayfield kind of blew off the Chargers, we're going to start with this right away and just jump straight into it. A question I asked the guys last night, and I ask you, do you think, we'll start with you, Coach, do you think that Baker Mayfield is as bad as people think? And do you think that the leftover feeling, the leftover idea that Johnny Manziel left on the league is kind of tainting Baker Mayfield because they're looking, oh, this is going to be another Manziel, so he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt as much as he would have if he would have come out before Johnny?
I don't think he's as bad or to the extent as Johnny Manziel was. I will say that, but I would say that Johnny Manziel did leave a bad taste in people's mouth. And you got to be smarter, and that's going to be, and that's anywhere. I mean, any prospect, any position, any round of the draft. As a fan, I used to be like, guys have check or pass. They need a redemption, an opportunity, or whatever. But going to the coaching side and the scouting side, things like those do matter. How the way you conduct yourself off the field can be very telling as far as how you're going to be as a professional, because some guys just don't know how to be a professional. They haven't learned it, and sometimes that can be a forecast for their future. I mean, look at, was it Reuben Foster from Alabama when he got sent home from the combine for yelling at a medical personnel, and now I'm seeing an article where he was arrested. So the writing's kind of on the wall with sometimes when you put yourself in a situation to get in trouble on or off the field. You got to be smart. You got to be heady, especially heading into the draft. Yeah.
And to give the fans an idea of before you jump in here, Blayne, give the fans an idea of what we're talking about. Is he had a meeting with the Chargers and basically was supposed to learn the playbook and go in there and talk to him, and he didn't do it, and he said that he's kind of prioritizing the playbooks that he learns. And you never know if the Chargers want to trade up. And I would love to get behind a team that has all those weapons and work behind. I'm having a blank here. Quarterback for LA.
Phillip Rivers.
Phillip Rivers, yeah, and work behind Rivers for a year. So I mean, that's a great gig, and the fact that he didn't even take it seriously enough to learn the playbook, that is a little bit of a scary thing. So I don't know. So Blayne, why don't you tell me what you kind of think about the situation, and then I kind of glossed over the intro to John, so we'll re-intro John, tell the people a little more about him after you give us your thoughts on the situation.
Okay, well, the first thing that comes to my mind when I read something like this, and just what you said, it sounds like he's not getting good advice, and that you would think in this day and age that his agent and his or manager or whoever would be coaching him up on how to handle these things a little better, what to say, what not to say. I mean, if he doesn't have the maturity and the clarity, I'll put it, or wisdom to answer these questions a little better, you would think that they would pull him aside and prep him up a little bit. I mean, they talk to him beforehand. They know him better than we do. They know him better than the reporters do. So they should have been able to catch this and say, well, this is what you're probably going to be asked. This is how you handle it. I know it's impossible to answer or predict every question, but for him to come out and say that I'm prioritizing, no offense, but I'm prioritizing, I have a lot on my table right now.
They sent him the playbook and said, if just learn these plays, and we want to see how you process and how you learn the plays, and how it goes. And they didn't send him the real playbook, but they sent him a playbook they wanted to see him process. And he's just
well, you know what, Chris?
He knew it was coming, and he's like, "Nah, I just didn't do it."
Yeah.
And then he told the media he didn't do it.
You know what the answer would be? I mean, if they wanted to bring me onto staff, I can real easily. I can prep them for this. I just tell they ask you a question like that, you just lie. Say yes. I've looked at that playbook. I mean, what is this? I mean, I want to give them props for being honest, but I mean, come on. You're going to slide in the draft. This is your future we're talking about, and as your agent, this is money coming out of my pocket. So lie.
Yeah.
Say that you did.
Yeah. Although if he got out there, if he hopped out there without getting on the playbook, it would definitely show. I can tell you that much.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So real quick, just to give people a background. Sorry, we've been talking so much off the air that now that we're on air, I forgot that we've been going over what your whole life and your coaching, but it's recorded. So why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself and your background and where they can find you, and we'll get that again at the end of the show. And tell them a little bit about what you got coming up this weekend.
Yeah, my name is Coach Downing. I grew up in Northwest Ohio, went to UNC Charlotte prior to them having a football team. While I was there, I did some indoor football as a student. I balanced school life with being a professional football player. I stepped away from the game for a couple of years, got back into it. Worked out for some Canadian football teams. Did the NFL regional, and then I had a catastrophic back injury, ruptured a disc in my neck and my back, and wasn't the same player. I decided to go into coaching at that point. So, I coach currently for the Carolina Energy, an arena football team in the American Arena League. No coffee, no sugar, just energy is what we say. And I also scout for the Columbus Lions of the National Arena League. So, I've had some success early on and blessed for that. And, just enjoying being on the show. I appreciate you guys having me on here.
Yeah, no problem. And Coach is also going to be joining us this coming Wednesday on the Coach's Show because Coach Shane McGowan will be stepping out. So it'll be Coach Christopher Taylor and Coach John Downing on the Coach's Show this Wednesday. All right. So with that said, here's another one. At the Combine, they asked Rosen, are you ready for what's going on? You feel like you're prepared? And he said, no. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to do my absolute best. And that knocked him off the board for a lot of teams. Do you think that's fair? I mean, you as a scout, would him not being confident or not having that cocky swagger and being more honest? I mean, some people like it, some people don't. How would you feel, Coach, if your possible future quarterback said that to
you? It's kind of a mixed bag. I appreciate the honesty. I'd rather him do that than be overconfident when inside his heart he's not. You can never tell the heart of a player, but if I'm going to spend a lot of money on a guy, it's going to be the franchise of my team. I'm sorry, the leader of my franchise. I definitely want to know what's going on, and I definitely want to know what's on his heart. And I definitely appreciate the honesty. I think that goes a long way. I feel like he's a smart guy, though. He could probably pick it up. So, I dig the honesty, to be honest. I'm one of those coaches that has a closer relationship with my players. I got one of my ball players actually staying with me from out of town. So, it's just one of those things. It just depends on the coach and the personnel. But I appreciate the honesty.
Blayne, what about you? If they want to bring this kid in to back up your Joe Flacco in Baltimore, would you like the honesty, or you want someone that steps on the field and thinks he's the best one between the lines?
I'm sorry. What did he say? What did he
He,
say about that?
they asked him if he felt he was prepared for the process, to move
Uh
to the
huh.
pros for the draft, and he said, "Not at all. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to give it my best and try and knock it out of the park."
I'll refer back to
To
my first
paraphrase.
answer. I agree with Coach. I appreciate the honesty, but dude, you know, you can phrase that a little better. Like I know that it's not going to be easy. I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to be prepared for. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. All of those things is better than the answer he gave. He needs coaching is what he needs. He needs somebody who
Yeah.
can teach him how to work around, rephrase what he's trying to say, and work around these questions just to make himself look more bankable, give
And
Yeah.
more
that is something
confidence to
that
the coaches.
and that is something that I've mentioned about him through this whole process. Is I think that he gets a little bit of a bad rap because I don't think that Mora did as good of a job as he could have. I think Mora kind of let the kid down with how he drafted or how he recruited the offensive line, the play calling, and just basically, I think that kid's career could have gone a lot better if he would have been with some different people or possibly at a different school. I like Jim Mora, senior and junior, but I think that they did not get the top level of potential, and like you mentioned, he doesn't seem to be as coached up as he could have been. And it's hard to hit those quarterbacks. I mean, that's you look back and you always find uh, quarterbacks being missed in the draft and people banking on
Yeah.
everything and some missing. A lot of the college systems don't translate. And the question is, can the kid learn? And most of the time, they can't. Goff comes from an air raid system, and it looked like he was going to be a bust, but he got the right coaches behind him. So let me ask you this, Coach, as someone that watches. I'm sorry, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, yeah. Going just kind of to go back to it, but I'd rather have, there's a saying, you don't talking has never won a ball game, and I'd rather have a guy who's modest and coachable and ready to learn. So that's another reason why I value his honesty like that.
Yeah, we'll definitely. I mean, the proof is gonna be in the pudding. So let me ask you real quick, Coach.
Yeah.
I know, Baltimore, Blayne, and I aren't necessarily draft nicks. Uh, a lot of times when you get these drafts that look like they have a lot of talent up top that are being taken early, you find people that fall down. Russell Wilson, third round.
Uh,
Brady being like the obvious one. Dak Prescott recently. Who do you know of anyone that you've watched this last year? Anyone that's on your radar that you think could be a later round guy that could really pick up and do something big?
um, that's a really really great question. I like the kid from UCF. Obviously, he's gonna be a high draft choice, obviously, but I really like him. I think he's gonna be a heck of a ball player at the next level, and I just feel like whoever gets him is gonna strike gold. Playing through the adversity, that's a big thing that I look for is to see a guy who's modest but can overcome a lot of things. That's definitely something that I look for and a quality I look for in a ball player.
Yeah, and just winning. That's why all those experts say things like Deshaun Watson last year. Or,
Yeah,
always bring up Russell Wilson being a Seahawk homer, but you got to give it someone who just knows how to win.
yeah,
And they beat the competition that's in front of them, and that's something that there are a few guys. The kid from Marshall. There's also the kid from the other small school. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's a really small school guy. But sometimes those guys can pop. So going
yeah.
over to you, Blayne. Got some news that came out today. Nick Foles, even though he was under contract and didn't have to do it, they revised his contract. They're paying him some more money, which he definitely deserves it. He got a $2 million signing bonus. They've extended him, and they have it so that if he does end up having to play, he has some incentives that would bump up. Now, besides the fact that good for dude, good for Eagles, the guy deserves it. Do you think this is kind of a sign that they're a little bit worried about Wentz being ready for the beginning of the season?
I think it's a smart move on their part to do this. I haven't really thought about how whether or not it's they're worried about Wentz. I think it was more about keeping Foles happy and in camp, just in case something else happens to Wentz. Just to have that insurance because they right now they've got the best backup in the league. So, giving him a $2 million signing bonus, and the big thing is that both both sides have the opt out next year. So if Foles wants to go elsewhere, or if somebody else is dangling a carrot in front of him, he can jump if he wants to.
Or they can pick up the option and trade him.
Or they can pick up the option and trade him. So it's a win-win situation. And I think it's a smart move. I think it's more about just having that insurance policy instead of going out and getting another backup or having to rely on a backup that's on the roster right now, possible backup that's on the roster right now, and not what you have in Foles. So yeah, I think it was a great move for the Eagles to do this, and I think it was more about being prepared if something else happens to Wentz rather than whether or not he's ready for the season.
How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I would say it has to do with it being an insurance option. I mean, anytime you got a guy who's coming off a season-ending injury, uh, you definitely want to make sure that you got Plan B taken care of, and I would say Plan C even to an extent. But I think also it's about keeping Foles happy. He did lead them to a Super Bowl win, and you want to make sure he feels secure and confident in Philly. And it should be a fun and interesting quarterback battle to watch. You got to basically put food on both of their plate, make sure both of them are satisfied with the situation. It's difficult. It's going to be a difficult situation to try to manage that. But they seem like two great guys who aren't afraid of some competition. So. But I think protecting the franchise is number one. So I feel like they did a good job addressing that by making sure that if for some reason Wentz doesn't recover like they thought he would, they don't have to go out scrambling and sign a quarterback off the street. They're already good to go.
Yeah,
Well, one thing, Chris, I'm sorry. One thing I can guarantee you is that if Wentz is healthy throughout this season, you won't be seeing Nick Foles on the Eagles roster unless something particularly bad happens to Wentz.
Right.
Yeah, we'll
talking about next season.
Yeah, we'll see. That'll be interesting because I think that Wentz, even though he would have been had an MVP season, I think the fact that he didn't get to play in the playoffs in that Super Bowl eats at him a bit. You can kind of see it in his face when he gets asked about it, and it because it's an asterisk next to the season.
Hey, here's one for you. What if Tom Brady decides to retire, and you see Nick Foles in a New England uniform next year?
Yeah, that would. I mean, I did hear someone bounce that idea around. It's just that's what I'm talking about. Like the stuff that comes out this time of year when there's no news, and the writers need something to write about. Just some of the stuff is so ridiculous. But I mean, I guess that would be the best way to go. Would be to pick up Foles. I mean, he's the best one on the team. That actually takes me to a hot take, and the question I'm going to ask you guys. Every year, you have a couple of playoff teams that go down. Maybe not, they don't drop to a losing record. But I want to look at some teams that I think that everyone is talking about that's going to explode this year. He's going to do really well, and that you think that you see signs that they're going to fall off. And it's actually funny enough, and I know everyone's going to tell me that I'm crazy. I don't think they're going to be a losing team, but I think that quarterback situation, I think that Wentz not being ready, I think that now that they got some more, the defenses have some more tape on Foles and what he's doing and what he can do, and him having to take the wear and tear of a whole season if Wentz isn't ready. I think that there's a chance that the Eagles might not be able to return to the form that they had last year. I see a possibility. This is a hot take. Hot take to me. I'm coming out of left field here, but what do you think? What do you think, Blayne? You think there's a possibility of this quarterback situation, and them just getting the wear and tear that comes from going to a Super Bowl, they could come back and kind of not fulfill expectations this year?
I think that they're going to make a strong run. I guess if you're a Super Bowl winner, the only way to go is down. So I can see a fall off that way. I still see them hitting the playoffs. I still see them at this point winning that division. Right. The team that I'm looking at, or the couple of teams that I'm looking at as falling off, is Jacksonville, relying on Bortles.
Yeah.
And what was the other team? The Chiefs.
Mahomes.
Transitioning to Mahomes. Those are the two that stand out in my mind right now. There will be others to follow as we go along, I'm sure.
Well, those are better choices than mine, but once again, mine was a hot take. Coach, what do you think? Who do you think? Who's going to be this year's Tampa Bay from last year?
I would say definitely. The Chiefs. Honestly, I feel like their window's closed. Jacksonville will be interesting to watch. I feel like they need to address that quarterback situation. I just don't think Bortles is the answer there. But I would say those two teams are going to be contend to be this year's Tampa Bay.
This year's Tampa Bay. Now, teams that I think are putting it together and doing better and could surprise some people. Why don't we start with you, Coach? Who do you think is going to come from left field and really show something, really surprise some people this year?
I'm going to have to say my Panthers. I am. It may be a little biased, but
yeah.
I definitely feel like we'll be competitive again. We're going to right the ship and get back to the show.
Get back to the show.
Yeah.
So what is it people overlooking when they're looking at the Panthers? What is it that the Panthers have that people aren't noticing that's gonna surprise some people and get you guys some W's?
The weapons. We got weapons unlike what we had before. McCaffrey had a good year. I expect him to build on that. Samuel should be healthy all year this year. Bringing in Torrey Smith was clutch. I feel like we still need to address our secondary, and we need to address the offensive line position. Being a Notre Dame fan, I would love to get Nelson or McGlinchey, but I know they'll be gone long before we pick.
Yeah.
But that would definitely be my wish list as it may.
What about Moore in the slot? Do you think
yeah.
Help you guys?
Yeah, I definitely would say so.
That would be nasty to run McCaffrey out into one slot and have Moore in the other and run 4 wide.
Yeah,
that would be nasty. Speaking of weapons, Blayne, you can tell us who you think is going to surprise, but I have a feeling that you might go on Homer's side too. You guys are signed Willie Snead to an offer sheet, so the Saints have so much time to try and match it, but it doesn't look like they're going to match it. So you guys just got a slot receiver. He's often hurt slot receiver, but you guys look like you're going to get a slot receiver. What do you feel about that?
And that's a good point, Chris, because the way that the Ravens go with injuries over the recent past,
so true.
It's just a matter of every time they sign somebody, goes, I think, wow, this is going to be good if they can stay healthy, if this guy can stay healthy. So, yeah, that's the big if on any team, I know, but with the Ravens and their track record is like, that's a snake bitten team. I'm going to go with the Ravens being better this year. I see them hitting the playoffs if they stay healthy. As far as other teams, I can't believe that Cincinnati is going to stay dormant in that division either. And that means somebody else in that division has to slide, which means either the Ravens are going to slide again or Pittsburgh is going to slide. And I'm not so confident that Pittsburgh won't slide. But
Yeah.
it's way too early in the off season for me to put anything on that. So that's where I'm going to stand. Another team I see getting better. I did this last year. I just don't learn, So I go back and I'm just stubborn. I'm going to go with the LA Chargers.
Yeah, that was my team last year that I picked to win the division, and another team just like my Seahawks, a different kicker, and that would have been a different season. That kicker they fired by week 5, man, he cost them the first 3 games. It's just the Chargers just can't catch a break. It just happens to them every single year. But I think this year they have a couple pieces to put together. Someone that I think might turn it around. I think people are underestimating just how much having Case Keenum can get that Broncos offense playing a little bit better. The defense isn't the same, but I think that they can pick it up. But the one that I really want to go to is, I think this is a year where if he's even halfway healthy, that Deshaun Watson is going to come out as a new superstar in the NFL. And I think him throwing to Nuke.
I can see that.
They got Tyrann Mathieu. Fuller's healthy so far. They're talking about trying to get Dez down there. I could see that team doing some things to surprise some people this year.
Speaking of Dez.
Yeah, go ahead. You weren't on the coaches show, so I'll let you two go ahead and talk this one.
Okay, so they were talking about Dez. Dez wants to stay in the NFC East, and there seemed to be no team that was interested. Brandon Marshall comes out on a tweet, says, "There's no room, bro. Sorry, we're full." So what happens? He deleted that tweet shortly after that. But what happened? Brandon Marshall gets released. By the way, he failed his physical on an ankle injury. Just putting that out there, Mr. Rose. So
did they bring in the Baltimore doctor to teach him how to fail?
I set it up. I know. So now there's I guess pictures of OBJ and Dez working out together.
They're working out together. Yeah.
Suddenly there's room on the Giants. It seems that the Ravens made a strong bid. From what I heard, they gave him the best money offer. And he just doesn't seem to want to get into the Ravens. He doesn't like that offense as it is right now.
Well,
that's that's what I heard.
Yeah, well, I was listening to someone today who is connected to that organization, and they kind of came out and said that they have enough problems with OBJ, enough that they're thinking about getting rid of his attitude. Last thing I think they're going to do is bring in Dez to add to that situation. So, it's
interesting.
Yeah, Dez is the one that said he wanted to go to the NFC East. And the NFC East team said they wanted Dez. People forget about that. What do you think, Coach? Where do you think he's going to end up?
Definitely not in the NFC East. I think you're right on when you say that the Giants probably don't want that headache. If anywhere, I would say Washington, because Washington always needs some help. But I don't think Dez could help anybody. I don't think he's that great. I think he struggles with consistency. His mouth is not worth the bucks for an inconsistent player. So where he ends up is anybody's guess. I guess it depends on how strong he holds to hoping to play in the NFC East, and if he's planning to sit around until he gets that offer to play out there, is really probably what it's going to come down to.
Well, one thing for sure is whoever gets him, wherever he signs, they're not getting that Dez from a few years back.
No.
So what you're getting is a player that's probably on the end of his, at the bottom of his gas tank right now, running on fumes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say quite running on fumes. But what you said, Coach, definitely inconsistency. And Chris,
Yeah.
what you were saying about the Giants, I don't see that as a good fit. Now you got two prima donnas on that team dropping passes. So
Yeah, that's what I said. I said I don't think they're
no,
gonna put that on.
yeah, I
I
was
said the
agreeing with you.
Texans. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I was talking about the Texans. My bad. I misunderstood. My fault. Yeah, and speaking of,
But that's it. That's the
yeah,
point I wanted to make.
yeah, and one of the reasons I didn't mention is also that you don't have the same kind of competition, especially on the defensive side of the ball, playing for the Texans. Going down there and playing some of those other teams in the AFC South might be the exact thing that he needs. So there's a lot of reasons why that makes sense. He doesn't have to leave Texas. I know he's an Oklahoma, Texas guy, so I don't know. It just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's we'll see what happens. And you're looking at the schedule. They have an easy schedule. They play the Browns. Obviously the other teams they play. And to go back to something that you said, Blayne,
Texans.
Yeah, Texas play the Browns, and then obviously they play Tennessee twice. They play Indy twice, and came out that Luck still hasn't even picked up a football yet. So that's a year or something where he hasn't even picked up a football. I think that might be a place.
I believe that was on a Tuesday show. That's the team I thought he would fit well with, is the Texans.
Yeah, and I think that's good. And going back to what you said, Blayne, about the Steelers, if the defenses hold up like they did last year, Ben Roethlisberger has a pretty tough road to hoe going up this year. He has a lot of pass rush. He has some good secondary he's gonna have to go up against. So this might be a tough year for old Big Ben. So I agree with what you're saying. I think has some validity. Hey, Coach John, why don't you tell us a little bit more about plug your team one more time? Tell us where you're playing and where people can reach you. And we're definitely gonna big up this coach show coming up on Wednesday. So why don't you plug again? Tell us about your team and where people can reach you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the Carolina Energy, playing Charlotte, North Carolina in the American Arena League. Currently sitting at 3-1. We're third in the league behind the unbeaten teams, which is Richmond, where Greg Hardy plays, and also Atlanta Havoc are undefeated, and then it's us. So we're third in the power rankings. Only team we lost to was the Greg Hardy led Richmond Havoc. I'm sorry, the Richmond Rough Riders, who almost got beat. It would have been lovely. I would have slid us up to 1 based on the power rankings. This weekend we go to Macon, Georgia, and play a tough Georgia Doom team. They're tough, but we should be able to hang about 80 or 90 on them. Last week we won handily against the High Country Grizzlies, 87-52. We won week 1 against the Triangle Torch. We beat them 64-25. So and the loss we took against Richmond was by 2 touchdowns, and we lost our number 1 and 2 receivers in that game. So I had Greg Hardy was tough, but my rookie from Catawba College, my left guard, was up to the challenge. It took him a couple of series to figure him out. In the second series, Greg Hardy had a strip sack, but after that second series, CJ figured out how to play him pretty well and kind of shut him down for the rest of the evening. And CJ admittedly said after the game, he said, "If I give up 1 sack all year and it's to Greg Hardy, I'm okay with that." I mean, at the end of the day, it's an NFL Pro Bowler who's playing arena football now. So we're a really exciting team. We're a really good team, and now we got all the ball players around trying to join our team. We just added a receiver who was with the Seahawks previously. He was with the BC Lions previously, so he'll debut Saturday night. And we got some other signings with some NFL experience coming in town here within the next week or so. So keep your eye on that. Again, we go to Georgia this weekend, play the Doom tomorrow night. We got a much needed bye after that, and we return home. Play our games at Bojangles Coliseum. We return home May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. We'll be hosting the Coastal Outlaws.
Sounds like a proud papa, doesn't he, Blayne?
Yes.
Yeah, he does.
How does Greg Hardy look?
He's not quite in football shape. I figured he would be with MMA, but there's a lot of difference between MMA and strapping it up and playing hard-nosed football for 60 minutes. And you know, the thing about arena is you really do got to be in good shape. It's a running clock. The time doesn't stop. It's so much faster than outdoor. Guys got to think quick. They got to be able to move quick. You know, it's 8 man. It's instead of 11, it's 50 yards. It's 27 across. The wall is undefeated, so you know there is no out of bounds. Um, it's just exciting, and it's usually higher scoring anyway. You know, but once we dropped that 87, you know, people started their heads started to turn, you know, because we're an expansion team, so uh, a lot of people didn't expect that from us initially going into the season. But we are the dark horse candidate to overthrow Richmond because we went to their house and played them tough and only lost by 14, and we sustained 3 injuries that game. So you know, we came out on top, even though the scoreboard doesn't show it. I mean, we really gave them boys a hard time, and we were the pesky little brother that wouldn't go away.
Well,
So
your rookie's putting up some good tape. You know, he can put up some tape against Hardy. So congrats to him. Congrats to you. Yeah, this is our off season, folks, and this is the mess around. You know, we're the expansion team of of the uh, of the podcast world. So we kind of feel you. What do you want to say, Blayne?
Chris, yeah, I had a question for Coach.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Coach Downing, let me see how I want to phrase this. Okay, we all know about. I'm going to ask you something about prep here.
okay.
We all know, as outsiders, outside the locker room, you know, as spectators, we've heard about studying tape, and of course, we know you have to go over the X's and O's practice and all of that. Is there what, if anything, surprised you about prep before, you know, that you didn't know before getting into coaching, that you found out once you got in the room, in the locker room or behind the scenes? Was there anything that you said, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was, you know, that maybe our listeners have no idea of what goes on there, without giving away any secrets?
Yeah, I would say it's film. Honestly, I'm still learning as a you know, I coached indoor last year. I got hired late, so I only had 3 games. So I'm technically still a rookie coach. My head coach is a former coach of the year. He's a championship coach. Big difference from last year. So I would say it's the amount of film that we need to watch and the way you watch film. I had never really broken down film. As a scout, you know, you analyze it, but you know, watch it each play over and over at least 10 times. It's just and then we know we watch countless hours of our opponents, basically watching every opponent in the league that we play this year. We've gotten film broke down from every game that we have, and we're only in week 5 now. So you know, it's just the amount of film and how much you have to force feed yourself that film. Everybody knows practice. You know, practice is practice, and you practice for, you know, 2.5, 3 hours. You know, everybody knows about the practice time, but it's the amount in the film room, and that's the hard part with arena football is you know, that's not your full time job. You know, guys have full time careers, or you know, so getting film in is, you really have to make a conscious effort to make sure you're getting film in, and even still, I don't feel like I get enough in. I feel like and then there's the things you're looking for, the demeanor, the way a guy gets in the stance, the way he comes out of the stance, are his hands on his hips, like all kinds of different things you look for that are cued into whether, not just whether he can play the position or not, as it were for, you know, a scout, but truly breaking down the player to where you almost know that player and what he thinks and feels better than he does. So I would say that that's been a big prep shock for me.
Well, is it how much? What's the percentage of film watching? Is it the majority of prepping, or is it? Can you give us like an idea of how much film?
I would say it's at least 60-40 film to practice, because you know, you base your practice on how things read out on the film, what you see on the film. You prepare your linemen to play against the guys they're gonna play against by having, you know, your say for instance the D line. You prepare your DN on what you see the guard do on film. You have your guard basically mimic that guy. So his demeanor, the way he goes about everything, what have you, and then you flip sides. The guard does the same thing for the end. So, it gives you the film really gives you the script as far as how the practice week is going to go.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Well, that's the kind of perfect thing that we can kind of touch a little bit on that on the coach's show too. I think that's a great question, and that's why I'd like to have Coach John Downing on. Once again, as I was saying, this is our off season, folks. So we're going to be doing a little bit of prep for the draft. The coach's show is going to be right before the draft, so we're going to get into the nitty gritty. We're on Tuesday nights. We have the Pigskin preview on www.blogtalkradio.com at Man City Sports. So yeah, we have the Pigskin preview, the coach's show, and then after the draft, we're gonna hit it into full gear and really get this season started. Because once the draft comes in, it's like Thanksgiving when you're looking forward to Christmas. Once you start to see the leaves change and you get to Thanksgiving, Christmas is right on the corner as a kid. Once the draft comes and people start showing up at the buildings, it's almost like Christmas time is coming. So this is the Mess Around, folks. Thank you so much for coming on to listen to us. You can find us right here. Give us a like, give us a share, and thank you to Coach John Downing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. I guess Coach.
You Go Energy.
You coach.
Yes.
You coach some. Yeah.
All coffee. No coffee, no sugar, just energy. That's our saying. Yes, sir.
There you go. Just energy. Thank you to Baltimore Blayne, Coach Shane McGowan, and Mark Hirsch will be back with us next week. Thanks, guys. Later.
Thanks.